So the first time I rode a Maico 490, so 20 years ago, I always heard about Maicos, how mean those bikes were, and there was a guy who had a almost like a dirt bike kind of graveyard where there's tons of bikes laying around his yard, and he also had a big garage, and we'd buy bikes from him sometimes. Within his big garage, he had all these old Maicos and Husqvarnas completely restored, in beautiful condition. He had 501 Maico, he had 440s, he had everything. So one day I went into his garage, and he had a 1981 Maico 490 sitting there, and it was a twin shock Maico, and it was huge to me at the time. It was just a very mean looking bike. The meanest bike I've seen. Had a big back tire on it. Had this big seat cover on it that said Dirty Harry's. And Dirty Harry's was an old, back in Pittsburgh, it was an old bike shop that would do European bikes and things like that. So anyhow, I had this big seat cover that said Dirty Harry's on it. So I came back later, asked him if he was going to sell that, and he's like, yeah, you sell it for like $300 or $400. Well, I was a teenager, I didn't really have the money at the time, so I was taking it for a test ride, and he couldn't get it started. He couldn't get this bike started, and so eventually he towed the bike with a car. He had to tow the bike to get it started. So eventually he did tow it, and it did start. And alright. So I took that bike for a ride after it got started, and he pulled up with the truck. The bike finally started, and took it for a ride, and it was interesting. The bike was, I said I was very scared of it at first, but I just started nailing the throttle. I went through like a parking lot. I went through like a little woods area, and then I eventually rode down the street. And I remember hitting it really hard. It just wasn't what I would expect. I'd expect that you hit down 490, that thing's gonna pull the front end up. It didn't do that. So it was very mellow, and after I stopped, he had stopped me, and I had stopped at the bike. If you look my feet down, you couldn't even see the pegs. The pegs weren't even there. You couldn't see them at all. The foot pegs, they were just vibrating so much that you just couldn't see them. So he stopped the bike, then he took the bike out, or he's like, try to start it now. So I tried to start it. I couldn't even pick it over. So much compression, this wouldn't move. And so he got on it and kicked it over many times, it wouldn't start again. He's like, okay, you know what? $200 I give it to you for. So kind of thinking about it at the time, but I didn't know where to get parts or anything. And he's like, it probably just needs a piston. And he said, I have a piston. He showed me the piston. I remember at the time thinking, it's a really weird piston, because the ring on it was L shaped, and I'd never seen it before. I was like, that's pretty cool, So I came back that night, another guy was there, and he had an 82 Maico 490 and an 83 Maico 490 in the back of his truck. And I didn't know this at the time, but he was actually trying to sell those, that guy. And unfortunately, I didn't know that. But he was only wanted like $500 a piece for those ones. So, make a long story short there, obviously didn't get those Maicos, but I remember they were arguing over it, and the guy who was trying to sell my bike was like, or the Dirty Harry bike was like, you know, these Maicos never start. These bikes never start. You know, no matter what you do, they never start. You know, they so hard to start. And that other guy was like, no, they start real easy. I take mine off of the trailer right now. I'll start both of them up. You know, and found out later that the other guy was trying to sell his at another time, but for $500 a piece, because he wanted to go to the Honda shop and buy a new bike, I guess. But so that was the first time I had ridden a Maico, and yeah, I'd always still wanted to get one, but I am very picky. I don't have an 81, and I'm very picky if I get an 81. 81 has to look a certain way, has to look very mean. And a lot of times the ones that I see restored just don't have that look to them that I'm looking for. So anyhow.